Well, it's what it's doing for me personally in the GHSA is answering a lot of questions. But you know what it is? It's based upon every individual's right to publicity, which is made up of three things: name, which is obviously someone's name; image, which could be caricatures, you know, this sort of thing, or oh, excuse me, image would be like photographs, those types of things, and then likeness, which could be caricatures and so on and so forth that identify the individual. And it's based on the premise that everyone owns those rights. I own mine, you own yours, everybody else does as well. And they can capitalize off of their name, image, and likeness. What they cannot capitalize on is athletic performance, in which we have an amateur rule that says you cannot benefit financially off of your athletic performance.
Okay. So when people hear this NIL, obviously they're comparing it to college, and they're hearing the lucrative numbers that are going on there. Talk about, I guess, how this is differing from the college ranks to high school ranks, especially here in Georgia.
Well, first off, a little background. You know, this has been discussed nationally for well over 2 years in the National Federation of High Schools, and currently there are 32 states and the District of Columbia that have some type of NIL rule. It's currently being considered by 7 others that I would expect by the end of the year would be done as well. You know, so it's been coming for a while. And so I began to speak about it probably a year and a half ago. And as soon as I did, I was inundated with calls from the public, coaches, everybody else saying, I can't believe you want to pay people to play football, for instance, or basketball. Well, that's not what it's about at all. It has nothing to do with that, you know, actually. And I knew at that time we needed some time to try to educate our membership. And so I've written about it, I've talked about it, I've been interviewed about it, you know, and of course the time comes and all of a sudden it's a big story when it's really not going to be that big of a deal. You know, we're talking about way less than 1% that will try to dip into the name, image, and likeness and build their brand and, you know, and those type of things. You know, out of 430,000 athletes, it's not going to be widespread. As a matter of fact, currently we have 6 such NIL activities that have been reported, you know, 3 of which were junior varsity 9th grade players who has an NIL deal with their dad's company, you know, for instance. So, you know, there is that. You know, obviously there are some better known people that would be able to possibly do that. And you talk about the colleges, you know, this is different. You know, we want to get ahead of it and have some guardrails on, you know, such as, you know, we have our undue influence rules and recruiting rules that remain in place, as well as our amateur rule, which states that a student athlete cannot capitalize off of athletic performance. You know, they can't be paid to play. You know, they can't be involved in an NIL activity that's using the school's intellectual property, you know, such as uniforms, name recognition, logos, facilities, those type of things. You know, if I could put it this way, if anybody, which they don't, wanted me to influence their products or online or whatever, you know, as Robin Hines, I could say, you know, buy this smoothie, it's great. I could not do that activity as the executive director of the Georgia High School Association. But I own my own personal name, image, and likeness and could have an activity based on that. The difference between the GHSA schools and the NCAA is they have a portal. And when NIL influencers, collectives, and those sorts of things come up with a better deal for that student athlete to enter the portal and transfer, you know, they do that all the time. We don't do that. You can't do that. even with a bona fide move, like if a student moves from one service area to another with everyone that they live with at the previous residence, with a simultaneous change of enrollment, that student is immediately eligible, okay? The reason doesn't matter as long as they make the transfer appropriately. Well, if there's an NIL deal that's involved with that, that would be unduly influencing that student to move, and they would be deemed ineligible. Now, the Georgia High School Association doesn't want to do a gotcha thing. You know, it's going to be an educational process over time where we get, you know, better and better at it, and people begin to understand the way that it works and what they can and can't do. But basically, you know, a student can't use their uniforms, they can't use their game footage, they can't identify themselves as that player for that school. And so basically it's just built upon the premise, once again, that every individual owns their own name, image, and likeness.
I think that's clear. I think that's good. And you said that as of right now, there's only been 6 reported cases.
Correct.
And like you said, you feel certain that it's not going to be. It's going to be the top players, but less than 1% of like all sports, pretty much.
Oh, I would say absolutely. You know, I mean, absolutely. You know, schools themselves have a difficult time of getting sponsorships and people to support them, and I don't think that businesses are overwhelmingly going to go and try to shower student athletes with money. You know, there are some that are evaluated that they have a high NIL ceiling, and that's fine. You know, one thing that I would say about NIL is every other student in the school has the capacity to build their brand and build their business and do those things. But prior to passing this rule, the student athletes, if a student happened to play sports, they didn't have the same rights and privileges as every other student that they go to school with.